Yo,
How we doing?
we're alive.
Yes, we are. Let me pop this out real quick. Getting the video side of things is always the more interesting part of setting this up. How you been? How's the
I,
season treating you?
yeah, things are fine. Middle of the week, so had a few interesting meetings today. But yeah, thought I'd jump in and talk LCS with you.
Let me there. Oh, damn the. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Normally on this, oh nope. Normally the names are swapped. So for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason, every time Paul and I hop in this call, uh, I my name's or I he automatically filters on the left side, and I normally go on the right. So give me one
So
second
you're
to.
telling me I got to be the trending LCS co-streamer for once? Oh,
Yeah, you get to say whatever you want, and more or less get away with it, other than a few people having an issue with it.
mm.
So do your worst. Let me update this. Save this real quick. It'll save over it, and then we're good to go. But and I think, yep, there we go. Names are good to go. All right, we're set. We're ready. Welcome, everybody. Episode 207 of the Crossover Podcast. Hard to believe this is episode 207. I don't think most people know that at this point. The running joke that Paul and I always have is that it might be the longest standing LCS non-Riot affiliated podcast at this point.
You've outscaled like the 100 Talk Pod, and there was the Flyquest flight check crew. Like
Yep.
you might actually be up there now.
I know
You don't
Monty.
you don't really you don't really chop it up and like serve it separately. Like it's like on your like live page instead of your videos page. So I guess it probably does go under the radar. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those that like the numbers on it never really did great, and I made the conscious choice early on to just kind of leave it live. If I ever wanted to clip it, I would. But beyond that, it was just like, like I'm not trying to push this. I barely remember to do timestamps as is, but more or less, it's a chance for a friend and I who never normally we don't get to talk all that much. He's got a wife, he's got a family, he's got stuff going on. It's a dedicated hour every week for us to sit there and talk. And that's more
Yeah. If
important to me
anything,
than anything
if
else.
yeah, I was gonna say if anything, the calendar block is probably the most important thing for the both of you, right?
It is. It's been nice because even he got deployed. He's part of the National Guard, flies drones.
Hmm.
So even when he was on deployment, he was actually able to still do the podcast. So we would adjust
Yeah.
the time based on his deployment, when he would be gone, when he'd be available, and it was apparently it helped him get through it a little bit. So it was very nice.
That's why we do this video game thing, I think. That's one of the most important things is to provide entertainment. I remember when I was a caster, trying to schedule things with people who were like in a 9 to 5 business job is super hard because guess what? When they're off work, I'm working because I'm supposed to entertain the people that are off work. So trying to find common ground there was super hard. So I definitely know how it goes.
Have you always had like I know obviously your career in esports has been historic at this point, but like prior to esports, did you work 9 to 5? Like what did you have a transition? Like what was it like?
Yeah, after I graduated, I was working as a school counselor, so that was very much school hours, right?
Yep.
So I would have to wake up early. I was in the country. It was kind of like a rural doctor kind of like posting, right? You usually start for a couple of years in the outback before you actually get to go to the big city hospital that everyone wants to work at. So given that, yeah, driving for 30 minutes to an hour and a half, school hours, and then home around 3:34. So I've had the 9 to 5 life, and I've had the esports life, and now the esports executive life, which is a bit more. We're 10 to 6, for example, of Flyquest. But
Okay.
yeah, back to the Monday to Friday a bit more.
Okay. So you're kind of back on normal hours then, to a certain
I mean,
extent.
sort of like esports execs or anybody on the team side of esports is always working, right? Like there's still, depending on what you classify as work, like watching the LCS on the day when we play, is that work? Yes, no. When I go in to support the team, whether it's like backstage or before or after the games, I don't take time trade off on like Monday. I still come in at 10. So it's 5 days, 40 hours plus for sure.
Yep.
But no complaints on my side.
I'm gonna guess salaried, not overtime eligible.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
something that most people, I mean, I corporate, obviously, we're used to that, but it always surprises me the amount of people that don't know how many jobs are not overtime eligible once you get past 40. So just a
Yeah, look, I can't complain. Obviously, C-suite, like I do fine. It's I do it for the joy, Like I could be doing a lot of things with my career, but being on the team side, getting now to spread my wings beyond just League of Legends, like it was 100 Thieves, and kind of doing it across multiple esports, but also actually understanding, like, because like at 100 Thieves, it was like, why isn't social media covering the League of Legends team more? Which I'm sure was like what you and like the dads on 100 Talk Pod were talking
little
about,
bit.
and because for your thing that you love, it's always I want more of it all the time. Like think of all the things it could be, and then you start learning about constraints and trade-offs and all the other things, the algorithm. You get more and more educated on that. I'm sure I've listened to you enough to know that you have a quick study there. So now I know too much to be dangerous in quite a few fields, not just League of Legends
Yeah.
roster construction these days.
It's interesting though, because it's like, I want to say most of the business talk for the end. I do want to cover the LCS off the jump, but what you saying that made me think of how one of the things I've always enjoyed about Optic, for better or for worse, prior to the franchising era, is they were hyper fixated on COD. And the relatability of that with Los Ratones right now is like they are very much fixated on one thing and one thing only. And the ability to hyper fixate on one thing leads to a lot of net positives that the corporate side of esports now, as teams have obviously picked up a multitude of teams, especially as Esports World Cup now encourages that even more. It's like you very much do lose that sense of individuality within the space that kind of made you what you were.
There's just an opportunity cost that's always existing, because like if you go for a very deep fandom, like Optic can definitely target their fans extremely well. Like their market is segmented. It's probably most of the same people. Like if you looked at, like, if you did a poll of how long they've been a fan of Optic, I bet it's not a lot of new fans. It's a lot of people who've been there quite a while. It doesn't mean there aren't new fans, right? And I think they're able to put out. I know they put out those like crazy documentaries. Actually, Roger, who does their documentaries, was the first. When I first joined 100 Thieves, he was doing the heists, so I got to work with him at that time. And they put out these like things that look like algorithm killers to like people in the League of Legends side, right? And do super well with them. So I think, so it's easy to look at that and be like, wow, that's like awesome. But recreating that for generic new org that has not trained their fans to like consume things in a certain way isn't the learning, right? It's like the learning is, wait, how did they segment that fan base? How much of it was a first mover advantage? How much of it was a time and place? Is it expiring year on year, or is that just the new norm for Optic fans? But yeah, that's the businessy stuff that we can shelve for now.
Well, we will get to that. I know a lot of people, myself included.
Really, you're interested in the business stuff, David Shynock? That's not the David Shynock I know.
Yeah. It's I've been sitting in boardrooms all day. Well, not boardrooms all day today, but you can read about it on Deadline, so I'm not really giving anything away at this point. But today was the internal introduction of Disney's new CEO, with like an hour-long town hall with David Muir, Bob Iger, Dana Allen, and then Josh himself. And it's interesting to hear like C-suite talk at that level that's designed specifically like for the people within Disney.
I mean, like roughly how many people were receiving that message? Talking lots and lots, right?
We don't see the numbers, but I can tell you there's 220,000 employees of the Walt Disney Company, all of which who had access to that live stream. So
there you go.
And it filled up the theater in the office, which is about, I think, 350 capacity. The Great Hall, which can fit up to like 700 up there. It was packed, and everybody just.
You're saying if it was a Twitch stream, the numbers might have been lower than Lost Returns versus G2 because of that?
I think it might have popped. I think there's enough interest in that one that it might have popped and beat out Los Ratones just slightly. But then again, well, they did also appear on ABC News the night before and gave the more like, public facing side of things, which that surprisingly only sitting at 33,000 views on YouTube. So very low, but you never know. But anyways, we'll get to that. LCS. I want to talk about this weekend first because I know we'll get sidetracked. Did you watch all the games besides like your own? Obviously, I know you're going to watch everything that you do, but how often do you get the chance to like watch the 3 other series for the weekend?
Depends week on week. I think so far I've been pretty plugged into the LCS. Like obviously some of the series I might be like, very much second monitoring or on a call, and other ones I'm watching closely, but enough to at least have vague impressions of everything.
Which series stuck out to you the most this weekend? Because I'll start there.
I mean, obviously C9 Lion was always going to be the one that I wanted to watch the most, just to like get educated on the other competitor teams, and see whether Lion is just a very interesting project for me to watch because I'm very much in the card carrying inspired is the goat kind of
Okay.
camp. The joke I always made was that inspired and four intermediate bots would make playoffs in North America, as in like really the intermediate bots. Like Antibot
Yeah.
is fierce, as we know. The beginner ones probably not, but the intermediate ones, I think they would get there. And he has good players on his team, but obviously, I think they're still working out their identity. It's like a bit rough that their Korean boot camp, was with obviously with
Zamudo,
Zamudo, and now they
yeah.
have a roster change. Zamudo and Dokla are extremely different players, in every way, like age, the role they want to play on the team, the role they need to play on the team. I think the team was always going to be play for bot because I think if you're bringing back Berserker from Korea, you're going to
Yeah.
do that. But people in 2026, play for bot doesn't mean impact first pick Scion and then you just like gank bot a lot of times. Like you actually have to be able to play 50-50 carry matchups top side,
Yeah.
you know, at the same time as kind of like obviously most of the resources going bot. So I think they're still working things out. I think they'll be a strong team.
The weird thing though is
I
I wouldn't even
personally
put the problem this past weekend. I would not put on either of those two, personally.
fair,
Like
fair.
I don't know if you watched Mind the Gap or how much like league content you consume outside of like your own stuff and everything that you got going on. Vedius had an interesting take that he thinks that Lion is the best team in the LCS right now.
They're definitely not. By like, I think
Okay.
that it'd be very hard to find a metric other than like, if you like tried to get their like aggregate FIFA rating or Madden rating for their players, I think you could probably get there
His
somehow.
argument was their objective control looks the cleanest out of anybody in the league, or objective setup specifically. I think he said.
That might be true. I mean, Inspired is like a Swiss Army knife of objective setups, objective control. Actually, his style on EG was one that we studied a lot, even back in the day, because I don't know if it's like always, I don't know if the tension's always drawn for the viewers, but one of the things he's the best at is fake contesting. Like he'll always walk up to an objective and look dangerous coming out of fog, and you're just kind of like, wait, last time we saw like how many of the players were on the other side of the map? Like
Yeah.
I don't really if you don't remember, then it might be that all four of them are right behind him, right? If you know what I mean. So he'll always look interested and he creates a lot of paranoia. Definitely people I think it was Spawned last year who talked about like the aura that he had, like walking up when he shouldn't have been able to as like a no flash Maokai or something. I don't remember what it was at the time. That's like 3 years of both winning and kind of his natural playstyle being indulged. Like he's very, very good at objective setups, and I actually do think there's going to be like it shouldn't be that surprising that their objective control is strong, just given kind of like the profile of the players they have there. But they have gaping holes in their playbook right now, and you know. I think definitely the mid jungle trust is probably going to be tested a bit, given like the
I
rise rundown and things like that. So,
I
yeah,
already had to
they're
talk some people off a ledge after
fascinating.
week one because people were looking at the clip and the voice comms of how Inspired was talking to Saint, and people were then looking back to your guys' documentary last year and being like, "Hey, seeing the similarities here, something tells me this ain't gonna be good." And it's like, guys, it's week one. Relax. All right. Saint did fuck up, like notably fucked up in the moment that they're talking about. So it's fine for them to say it. But like it seems like the alarm bells have not gone down for people after last year yet. I don't know if they ever will,
And
to be
I
honest, because that perception seems to be implanted.
well, Casper will never change. Like Inspired will never change. Like he is in all facets of his life very, very straightforward and blunt. He doesn't say things bluntly to cause offense or to make people feel bad. Uh, I won't say never because everyone kind of has their off moments, but that's never his intent. His intent is I want to win at all costs. Like he is a student of the game. Like he doesn't really have any other hobbies during season. Like he's one and totally focused on winning and trying to find ways to win. And there's definitely, for me, the inflection point on kind of like understanding. I think people will be like, he's a bit of an asshole. Would like to be like kind of like the way people would think
Yeah.
about it until The Last Dance came out and people saw how Michael Jordan was. Like I'm old enough, like I just turned 39. When I was a kid, it was peak Michael Jordan mania, right? Like when I was like, 10, 11, 12, 13 years of age, it was all about Michael Jordan winning those like last three um, NBA championships. And that was Space Jam was coming out, and like I'm Australian, right? So I'm not like I'm not as plugged into Americana, but
Yeah.
Michael Jordan was just like clean cut winner, seemed like a really nice guy. Like there was no like counterfactual. That's all I knew, right? It was
Yeah.
like, wow, Michael Jordan is like the clean star, and then you see The Last Dance, you're like, oh, someone who wants to win and knows how good they are is a very certain type of person. And if you've never interacted with one, you can reduce it to like, hey, he's not valuing that person's feelings as much as I would have in that scenario or I do in my scenarios. And it's like, well, you're not in his scenario where
Nope.
like he's got a limited biological clock on how long he can win for, and any variable that stops him winning, he isn't going to tolerate. And I think Inspired definitely taps into that. Um, and I think that's going to be the thing to watch is that Saint is obviously a prodigious talent. We scrimmed against him with 100 Thieves. You'll be interested to know. We scrimmed against DK Challengers a lot in kind of like 2021, 2022. And he came in as a sub, I think end of 21, I want to say, and was clearly already talented. And he's a great player to have in North America. But I think definitely the jump from Audi to Inspired is a very large change in
Slightly.
personality. And also the pressure around the org is no doubt going to be intense
Yeah.
because in every single way it's I think the adage they're going to take is like we are spending to win, we are sacrificing nothing to win. If we don't win, then it's going to be someone's fault.
Yep. To your point, I missed the Michael Jordan craze. Like I was
Yeah.
just young enough now at 31 that's like I don't remember any of that. But I grew up with
Mhm.
the Tiger Woods era. And
Sure.
I've read every book that there is about his life, coaching him, and everything that kind of evolved around that circle. And I remember Hank Haney saying the first time that he gave him a lesson, or the first time that he asked him for a bit of advice, Tiger is like, hits a few balls, says, give me feedback. And the balls that he hit were perfect. There was nothing to necessarily like comment on based on the result of it. And Tiger takes in the feedback, looks at him and says, fuck you, go. And then calls him back the next day to come and give him another piece of advice. And Hank Haney realized at some point that it was best to challenge him and kind of play into the ego. It's like he thinks he can do everything because he realistically can. So the only way you can do that is to push them further. Like you almost have to hit them to their breaking point and be like he was never able to do it. But the thing they wanted to get him to do, I don't know how much you know golf or not, but one of the hardest shots to hit is like a driver stinger. It's like a flat club that barely, and to hit a stinger, it barely leaves the ground. It was something that Tiger would do with irons, but he could never do it with a driver. And he tried to get him to do it and was like this close away. Had he done it, he probably would have broken Jack Nicklaus's record for majors, but just
Hmm.
couldn't get there. But same thing. You're dealing with a player who one of the greatest of all time. You have to have an insane level of ego to be there. And you have to know how to plug that into the right situations, whether it's an individual sport or team sport, to be able to get it to work. Otherwise, you will tank team chemistry, without a doubt.
It's why he always has to be the first piece and not the last piece. I actually think a project like Lion versus like just come to G2 is directionally going to set the scenario up more for success. Now G2 has the okay, well he knows he's playing with Caps, a player who was like thwarted him time and time again, and whether it's the Rogue era or even at times in his North American journey as well, maybe it'll just work. But if you're taking a process view of it, then process wise, he should always be the first piece, and you should be really conscious around who you surround him with because whether it's coaching or players, like he also needs coaches that understand the game on a really high level. It's why him and LS while he wasn't directly coaching them, obviously he was still a resource for us. That would always be a really interesting kind of like sounding board for the two of them, just because he would always kind of like earnestly try the things LS came up with, whereas but he was never going to be a zealot about it, right? He'd always be like, well, I respect this guy, his logic is sound, I'll try it out in a real game scenario and then I'll have feedback to give it, rather than just like mindlessly accepting it or mindlessly rejecting it, which is a lot more common a way to go with that.
There's almost respect in the like when somebody invests time and dedication and shows like a basic level of understanding, whether you agree with it or not, you respect what it took to kind of get there. And you could tell
Oh,
within
for sure.
top athletes, top analysts, top everything, that level of respect. You might not acknowledge it, but it's there, 100%.
If someone puts a lot of effort into a formulation, has a pattern or track record of doing good work, the least you can do is try to like judge it on its merits and try to understand at minimum where did it come from and what can you learn or jump off from it, rather than just like wholesale rejecting it. I think that's like the one thing you should never do.
So speaking of the best, then
Hmm.
team that they lost to, team that you guys are going up against in C9. I mean, I don't think it's anything wrong to say that you guys are massive underdogs going into this weekend, given
Hmm.
expectations of how everybody's performing right now. Even though you guys are
Yep.
performing great, sure, give you that.
I mean, they're 4-0 against
Yeah.
better teams than we have taken down, and we're 4-1. So
What do you think? Like, what makes C9 tick right now? Like, is it just that early chemistry that they're on they're on the page that we thought that a team like Shopify would be, but is not like, or is it just like the skill floor truly is that high for them already?
I think the high floor is for sure something that's super helpful, right? Like only Shopify has like made small adjustments like they have year on year. And they introduced a really high floor player that's first language English, to replace the one player they changed. And I think that has been great for them. Honestly, the moment that they settled on APA, the like the takeaway I had, I always try to work out, my takeaway is always going to be something that's like a next step thing rather than an immediate thing. And my next step is like, it's the Blabber MVP season. Like
Yeah.
that was my first thought of it, is like, if you have Sven and a mid laner that moves, then Blabber is the one that's going to look good from that. No language barrier. APA, wants to be playing Talia and champs like that.
It's been since what,
So I
Niski
think,
that he's had that probably.
I mean, obviously all players can play that style, but
But
I
somebody
think
that we know the difference between somebody that can and somebody that's genuinely like
but
they
it also
almost thrive in that.
streamlines. What also streamlines for the coaches, like the coaches know what to draft for APA. Like everyone knows on both sides what APA plays, and the advantage if you have like unlimited champion pool mid laner is like you can predict what he's going to pick and you can get the counter pick. But he's played the counter matchup from the Talia side or the Zig side way more than your player probably has, and you just have to make the calculation there. So I think they're a really, really solid team. I think they're very well coached. You could definitely see Dom's imprint on the team already, even though it's early. And um, it's one of those things where, like, if something happens at the LPL at 3 a.m., you best believe that they might be pulling it out, 9 hours later on the LCS stage. Whereas with TL, if something happens in the LCK at 3 a.m., you best believe that Core JJ is pulling it out on
Yeah.
the stage. It's always funny. You got to have the like remote analysts watching the watching LPL and LCK. When you have coaches that are like wired that way, it's always funny.
I need your bot lane though to beat. I don't care if you guys lose the series. I need your bot lane to beat the dog piss out of C9. I really do. Just because I had them higher in my rankings at the beginning of the year, and I'm already eating egg for it. That I cannot possibly deal with C9 starting 6-0, the bot lane looking good, and I have Sven fourth in my power rankings to end the split. Which grant could still happen when we get to playoffs, and the mispositioning could rear its head again. But like I need you guys to step up massively here just for my own ego.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. I think I know what the matchup looks like if scrims are an indication. I know what the matchup looks like if Sven and Vulcan can grind that extra experience they have, and kind of finesse them. So I mean, big shout out to Master and Cryogen. Obviously, we had no idea what that would look like on stage or even in scrims like a month ago, right? We're only I would say like 4 weeks into the season, a little bit less than a month. And they've solo killed in both series they've played, 2v2 killed. So I think they've started really well. I think the ceiling on that duo is incredibly high, but you know, some Nautilus lane where Jarvan shows up and they get a kill at level 2 or flash at level 2 in a skill matchup. Like I know what a win and a loss looks like, and I think power rankings for winter split or whatever we're calling this split one were
Lock
always
in.
going to be
Yeah.
lock in. They were always going to be a bit spurious, so we're going to be all over the place. You know, rating Flyquest players that had never played tier 2 or 3 or whatever you want to call it. Was going to have massive variance. I expect my team to have a lot of variance early. In fact, I'd be disappointed if we didn't. Like, what does it mean if they go 6-0? Like, if we had gone 6-0, it probably means that we're developing bad habits that's going to affect our long-term growth, you know? Like, all I want from these boys is to take a lot of risks, make mistakes like we did against TSG, and be the better for it. So I make no absolute promises for the weekend, apart from should be a bloodbath. And I'll worry about the end of year power rankings more than the split one power rankings, I'm afraid.
I can promise you I will watch it on Monday morning. I will not be watching that one live. I'm sorry. There's a Bad Bunny concert going on that my priority is unfortunately
A
gonna
Bad Bunny concert with some hand egg?
Yeah, you know, a little bit mixed in. I might be one of the only people in the world pulling for the Patriots this upcoming weekend. So
I don't even know the matchup. It's Patriots versus, is it the Patriots versus who?
Seattle Seahawks.
Okay. They sound like the unfancied team.
Honestly, the Seahawks are favored in this or should be by a good bit. If it wasn't for the fact that the Patriots are just historically a good Super Bowl winning team for whatever reason. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they have Brady, but like their track record speaks for itself. But I cannot personally cheer for Seattle because then it proves that our Minnesota Vikings front office is the worst of all time. So can't have that happen. Can't have Sam Darnold, or former quarterback of last year, going out and winning a title there. That's not going to happen.
I can hit the ball back to you on a lot of different sports metaphors and sports, but NFL is not in my wheelhouse.
Well, I see chat going in on the jacket already for the Man United.
Yeah. I mean, we've been having a rough couple of years, so at least it's not glory hunter days. When I was a kid, it was very much like, they're the team that wins. Of course you'd wear that. But I don't know. It was a nice jacket. Why not?
I can't say I know. Okay. It's not that I don't know anything about the Premier League. I know one team and one team only. And if I gave you 3 guesses, I'm sure you could probably get who it is.
I mean, there's famous teams, and obviously you said Man United already. I'm sure you would have thought of them.
Nope. It is as basic as
there's Arsenal, Chelsea, Man United, Liverpool. That's like
they're
kind
not
of
in the
teams.
Premier League, but I'm hoping they will be next year.
Wait, like Wrexham?
Yep.
Oh God, you got your Hulu Plus following going on there.
It made me watch the show, and I learned a lot about the sport, and learned about at least one club that I could somewhat relate to, and I enjoy Ryan Reynolds as an actor. So
they might qualify for the English Premier League despite not being English.
Wales.
They're Welsh. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
It's a different country, bro.
I love watching the economics though of it. Like watching them have to like build out the stadium to hit capacity for the FA Cup now, and
Is this where you say something franchising bad just to like
not
turn
yet.
it from EPL to
not yet. No, because I've been a franchising fan. Like the argument I've been I guess we'll get into this a little bit now. We can circle back because this will hit on the other matchup of the weekend in a bit. But I've actually been a proponent of franchising for a long period of time. Maybe I'm just traditional sports pilled with the NFL, with the NBA,
American,
NHL, obviously American as well. So it's like a very American thing to do. But like when people tell me that franchising can never work in esports, I sit there and say, okay, you're telling me if we have a world where it's a franchise league that consists of T1, Hama Life, Gen G, KT, TL, Flyquest, C9. Pick any 5 teams from China. K Corp, MCOY, Los Ratones, G2, and I'm not going to include Fnatic because I know the owners are looking to sell the club now, so I have zero faith that that'll be like a long-term thing at this point. You put them in a franchise league that tours around the world like the WWE or has like, you know, CSGO style major circuits, and you can even invite some other people in if you want to, but if you want to keep it exclusive. No, I trust every single player and owner in that system to actually do the right thing and grow a franchise league. So I believe it could work, but we're not in the right, like, individual franchise regions, different story.
And it's also a difference between like franchising kind of suggests all the accoutrement that you get in these American traditional sports. So like the draft and you know um, the teams owning the league and there being a big pot of money that you need to spend a minimum amount of and all those things. And well, this is very much more permanent partnerships is that kind of the scenario that we have more so in esports. And while you choose like a great list of teams, there would still need to be like the guaranteed economics behind it to and like the actual because it's very hard to set up a world
Yeah.
league. That's like the truth there is that, obviously there's talk of salary caps and other things in outside of the LCS, and then the LCS, it's been well covered that there needs to be certain other things set up that don't exist, and thus salary caps aren't possible here. So I think the ideal of what you're putting forward, I think, would be an awesome product, but the question that fans will always have is like, does it need to be exclusive?
Oh no,
And
of course
to me,
not.
but it has to be. The only reason for it to be exclusive is to be like the biggest possible pot of money to share to ensure long-term parity in the league. Like in Australia, for example, the AFL, the Australian Football League, is franchise with a draft system, and you can like look at the winners of the last 30 years, and sure, there's like one or two dominant teams, but like everybody kind of wins eventually is what you're able to pull off there, and that's never existed in League of Legends, right? It's been crazily dominated like the first like 6 years of EU, like pre G2, it was Fnatic every time, right?
Yep.
To a great degree. So just different worlds, you know?
It it's one where it's like Cloud Sicky, myself, Marn, and a few others talk privately, and we were watching the Arnold interview of them
Hmm.
talking because they mentioned about the road trips and how it's costing $1 million
In
minimum
Korea.
in Korea. So it's like, one, I know you can't say this, but I'll say this. I think it's dumb on Riot's part, personally. Like I don't know what production standards you were sitting here requiring for $1 million, but I promise you can hit pro I'm not going to guarantee a percentage, but you can lower the production cost, lower the cost for teams, and I promise you we will still eat it up as fans. And I just don't think they get that. But it's like one of the things that we were saying as a repercussion of that is like, oh, okay, the economics of this, even in this world where we have like the John Needham interview with Travis was 2022 when they said we need to lower the amount of teams in the ecosystem and that will make it work. It's been 4 years since that point. We have lowered the amount of teams and we still can't make it work. There's this underlying feeling that major change is still coming in some capacity. And I know it's going to scare the crap out of people, but I cannot escape it in my mind that that is coming still.
Yeah, my impression of Riot, obviously not going to draw into specifics, but my impression, if I like think back to what I saw when I was talent, what I heard when franchising was set up, and is that definitely like 2017 Riot, 2022 Riot, and 2026 Riot are looking at very different kind of like sets of assumptions, sets of projections, different kind of instructions from up top. And the world changes, and that's not a satisfying answer to hear, but that the media rights stuff that would have felt so ripe in 2017 is like now like an industry wide just not possible.
Yeah.
And that's one of those big slices of the traditional sports pie that has just disappeared. And just looking at kind of like the reality of where things are at, and just how the game started as a marketing arm and like a marketing expense, and then now is kind of like looking to be, from what everyone talks about publicly, like profitable on its own. Like these are just wild changes that in traditional sports happen over decades, but obviously have happened over like years and sometimes months. And it's tricky to make sense of for fans, and sometimes it's tricky to make sense of for franchise partners. Like the world can change very, very quickly.
the one thing that I do disagree with is you said it's a different world 2017 versus now. 100% agree.
Mhm.
I don't think we're in a different world from where the expectation was set at the end of 2022.
But don't you
The
agree that like I feel like end of 2021 and through 2022 is still COVID projections, you know? Like that was
I
still massive inflated numbers. Even being team side at that time, there was
I'm
still
ignoring the
VC.
viewership number. Like even taking the
Mhm,
viewership number part of it out, like what was the intention of the moves that were being made at that time? Like what was the directive that was coming down from upper management to them? Clearly was if they're speaking about consolidating teams, consolidating
mhm,
regions and getting to financial uh not even profitability, but just break even and financial stability. That's the same rhetoric that's been the course for 4 years now.
mhm.
So like now, like we're able to judge now based on what they said then. And I
Yeah.
can't look at it and say that they've taken some swings. It feels like almost all, for the most part, have missed in terms of the bigger ones that they took. The small
Mhm.
ones, I mean, like great that we now get a skin for each event, like which was the Empyrean line, I think last year for first stand. I know this year's getting a dedicated skin line with it. MSI gets a skin line. World, like you get one skin from that line that obviously goes into the global revenue pool, but like the strategy clearly isn't working when the same people that were raising alarm bells then are still raising alarm bells now. And it's like, okay, so what if the mission is still the same? What are you going to do drastically different? Like, what's your next big swing?
I mean, obviously, the bigger swings that probably weren't on the books in 2022 were things like the attempt with the LTA to further consolidate
Those conversations
um,
were around back then.
leagues.
We didn't know it
Not
was
in the
going to be with the LTA or with Brazil, to be very clear. But I remember people talking about it back then that it was a legitimate worry that like we might get folded up with Europe or something of that sort might happen.
Yeah, I mean, to the teams, that was never kind of like brought to our attention at that time. So I agree that it was always an idea, right? And at the end of the day, kind of just the fact that the league used to be very connected in 2017-18 in the EULCS to NALCS days, and by 2022, the LEC had really kind of carved itself out as a product that was distinct from the LCS, and it was way less fashionable to follow both as if they were like two halves of the same whole. So I get where you're coming from, but the only thing I can kind of interject with when it comes to the conversation, like a lot of the conversation points would be the same. Like if you interviewed John Needham now, I think he would echo a lot of things from 2022. But I think the economic um, reality around it, like the value of money, like
Sure.
the
Yeah,
VC
that I
changes
agree
and
is
things like
drastically
that.
different than where it was.
So if you make that comment and then kind of like the value of money changes, then your forecast of how long it's going to take or how you're going to do it changes at the same time, right? Because like, okay, the solutions I saw, like at that time, they were probably thinking about FTX and kind of like other, revenue streams and things like that. Just like in 2017, they were thinking about media rights, and then suddenly it's like, okay, that assumption is gone. How do we now problem solve out? And look, like you say, I don't think anyone will position that they found the answer. It's still very much a iterative process. And the only thing I can give Riot credit for, and I'm not speaking on this show as a representative of Riot by
Yep.
any means, is that when I joined the team side in end of 2019, it was very, very difficult to impress any new ideas or change or kind of like where I had very strong thoughts about where I thought the product should go, about where the league should go, and things like that. And it was very much like, okay, but like we know what we're doing over here, kind of vibe. These days, as obviously numbers have declined and things like that, at least it's a much more productive conversation. At least the phone is already always ready to listen. At least the correction on things like the LTA is faster than anyone can expect. People would say the correction on in making fearless a global thing versus just a one split thing is too fast for some people, and definitely
Sure.
that's a fair conversation to be had. Is like, oh wait, I made my roster around something, and then suddenly my mid laners champion pool being small is now being like targeted in a way that I couldn't have set up for. Like all those are valid conversations. I just personally like that it feels like the finger is on the pulse from the teams and from the developer. And it doesn't always lead to like big W's or anything like that, but it makes the job feel more like a partnership, which I think it will only continue to do. So I have optimism that, you know, that we're moving in the right direction, and it's not like two people fighting like it felt like 5 years ago.
It sucks that it had to bottom out to get to that point, to be very
True.
clear. Like
Agreed.
that's
Agreed.
I can't
Yeah.
imagine like I've always wondered what it'd be like to be a fly on the wall in one of those owners meetings, even dating back to like 2018, and just like know some of the things that were probably being raised and just likely being ignored. And it's just like, oh man. And to the point you said about, certain things couldn't have been predicted back in 2022. I will stroke my own ego just a little bit, because there was one guy that was pushing for the idea that what if we took the LCS on the road for 2 team-driven road trips a year, partner with American colleges, and just for regular season weeks got out of the studio. And if Riot wants to have a finals, whatever, it might be what it is. At the time, I pitched out to Jackie Felling. This is, I want to say,
Good old Jackie.
I think it had to have been beginning of 2022. Like lock-in still existed, because I know I was pitching it before Spring Split started. Little did I know I just pitched it for the wrong goddamn region, and it would actually hit for Europe 4 years later doing this exact thing. And I know you've already said about it not being profitable, and the events obviously are more costly than they're supposed to be right now. But clearly, teams and leagues have come around to the idea that, oh yeah, maybe we did need more touch points with fans that we weren't doing. Maybe we do need to go like send LCS for a week to DreamHack. You guys are already going to have a presence there due to your other games. It's not hard to just shoehorn that in if you can.
Look, I'd love for the LCS to be a traveling roadshow kind of vibe. You know, whenever I get to interface with that Counter-Strike team, which has much more of that kind of a setup, it's fun. I think the grass is always greener. I remember I was at IM Oakland 2016, which was when League of Legends was still on the IAM circuit. I was casting there, and I got to meet the CS talent because it was CS:GO event at the same time. And it was very much, they were like, man, it must be so cool that like you can like set up your life in one place and like not live out of a hotel for 10, 11 months a year. And then for like obviously the League of Legends people, it's like, wow, you guys get to travel the world. That's so cool. Like there's always, a novelty to the other side of things. I think the question is just who's paying for it is like always the question when it's the road shows. Like if Riot came to us and they're like, we worked it out in the budget, we made a deal with Delta and like Marriott and like all these other, people, and it's going to be cheap. We're going week on week. Great. Because I always say it to business staff, like we always try to get as much business stuff out to a LCS final as we can, just because those moments are the ones where you realize why you're in esports, like when you interface with way more fans who are so happy to get to touch League of Legends, because normally it's just a like Los Angeles exclusive experience. You get the amazing stories about, oh, I used to play with this group of people and we're finally getting back together now, we're working or whatever, and we get to be there. Like those are the things that I think of it a bit like a recharge. Like it like recharges your esports optimism and battery for like another 6 months, which is helpful. And so I'm a huge advocate for them. I would love for them to be more, but if it's costing $1 million in Korea to run a homestand, and then we're in the United States, we're talking multiple million at that point. So I think the point you came to
be more than LCK.
Oh, much. It would have to be more, right? Like, I don't think the production. I can't speak. I haven't had those like extended conversations about what the production needs to look at. But you would assume it's like, well, you need the production to look as good as it would be if it was in the LCS studio. Is probably the vibe.
The majority of our viewership's from people watching it in their bedroom, which I get. You're watching a polished broadcast behind. I'm not.
This is for a different podcast where you're talking to Riot. I can't speak on that.
I know. It makes you want to bang your head against the damn wall.
What I'll respond to that you talked about before, you mentioned the DreamHack ideas, because we have the women's Counter-Strike team and we have our own CS team, and I've definitely started going back to these multi esports events that I was at, in 2016, and then of course it became Riot only shows up at their own events, and it's fun being at Evo and being at DreamHacks and IEMs with multiple games running and kind of like rubbing shoulders with people that I haven't seen in a long time, and it reminds me of when in 2013, 14, and maybe 15, Riot would go on road shows, and it
The
wasn't just for the
MLGs.
LCS final, right? It'd be like week threes just happens to be when PAX West is happening, so we're out there, and it's like you would watch it as a viewer and it would be scuffed, right? There'd be audio issues, like it would not be perfect, but the scale and the novelty of it made up for it. And I'm sure there's some purist who's like, okay, but like those results will be different. Like, people already talk about how like GX beat G2 at the homestand last year, and if it was in the LEC studio, that wouldn't have happened. And you can have those arguments if you want, but I think definitely going out and doing those things is cool. But for a long time, Riot was very much like, it's a League of Legends event produced by Riot or it's in the studio. Nowadays, I don't know how they would approach sharing kind of like across multiple games and things like that, but I think it'd be fun for
They'd
sure.
still be the wild part to me if I'm making the appeal to Riot and like I know like the corporate side of things, the ego that you
Hmm.
kind of need to play into. My logic would be like, don't you just want to go out and feel like you're hot shit for a minute? Like it's one of those like you're going to be the biggest one in the room in theory. Like Riot Esports titles just have that aura to them, or at least like that's the perception. Like if you go to one of these events, you're gonna pull probably more so than anybody else. That's gotta be a bit of it, like a bit of an ego boost of like, yeah, hey, we know that we got it independently, but just like you show up, establish a little bit of dominance, and then be like, all right, still got it.
I mean, watching from the outside, like not even getting into like what owners meetings and stuff can be, but even just like as a from 100 feet up in the air, I think it's over the course of League of Legends just been a question of control, right? Like I think Riot has always wanted control, whereas Valve was always willing to give up control, and I think that is shifting a bit. Valve, for example, have taken over the like majors qualification and how the circuit is rated. That's like way more of a hard touch than they would have done in the past, where they just kind of like sat back and allowed things to happen. And then the presence of EWC in the calendar and the ability to run, Red Bull League of its own and other kind of like tournaments, whether they're in the off season or they're in spaces that have been created bespokely, is a movement from Riot to give up control. And I don't know what that looks like in 5 years from now. That's actually just a question that I'm eager to find out, because people always say, "What about if League of Legends took over like a Counter Strike like calendar, or what if these things happened?" And I'm down for any of them. I just need to understand what Riot's trying to solve for. Because as long as it's logically consistent, we can go in a lot of different directions. And the one thing that I know for sure is that League of Legends happened in the North American time zone for MSI last year, and a fuckload of people watched, which suggests that the time zone is not there's not like a hard cap of like, sorry guys, it's 2025. There's only 300,000 people at, GMT -9 that can watch League of Legends. There's just everyone else is asleep. Like that doesn't seem to be the case. And again, if you want to haircut that, you could say, okay, but T1 was there, or there's other like unique attractions. And I can't cover all my bases, but I can say that when I see that, I'm like, oh, there's a product that we could offer that involves competitive League of Legends that could get a fuckload of viewers in this time zone. We just haven't quite threaded the needle yet. We just got to get better at finding that product and offering it to fans and getting them to stop scrolling their TikTok and coming to twitch.tv/LCS.
More people want to than I think execs might realize. Like we're dying for a way to get off our phones for at least a little bit, whether we admit it or not. Like it doesn't take much. Okay, it takes a little bit more to pull us than you would think, but once people are there, they're there. And to your point, like even if T1's not there, which with Faker signed through 2029, I find it hard to believe that they wouldn't be there. You're
Mm-hmm.
gonna have a guarantee of some combination of Chovy, Guma, and Zeus, or Faker at an international event, no matter where you put it, representing Korea for at least the next 4 years. You can plan on that being a thing. Like, there's no world where you don't. And if you don't,
But
then
to
it's a
reach,
freak act. It's a freak thing, and then there's a massive storyline to go with that.
but then to retread kind of the conversation I've had on other podcasts, my idea is like, okay, if you're playing domestically, it should be a qualifier for one of these international events that we can, instead of going worlds is like 4 countries over 4 years, let's go to all 4 places each year, kind of vibe. Or six is like my ideal, 6 qualifiers into 6 international events, kind of do it
Oh,
on a
that
2 month
sounds so
scale.
nice.
But, so we go that way. Okay, well, what happens from there? It's like, okay, I'm pretty certain that less people in each region would draw a full-time salary from competitive League of Legends, whether it's
Yes,
players or staff. That might be the same amount of people paid, but obviously, like you
the
look at like the
scale
third
changes.
biggest
Yes,
North American Counter Strike team, and they're not making 70K a year each per player or anything like that. And I think for a long time there was like a vibe from Riot. It was never directly said to me that it was about kind of like having the most amount of people earning kind of like a gainful living from League of Legends was like a goal they had. Is like they want there to be like this like big network of people who are playing and competing in League of Legends. That's the sign things are going well.
yeah,
And that is absolutely a metric of success that you can choose, and Riot gets to choose.
sure.
Is it about one thing, or is it about the other? Now, if they came to me and they were like, okay, we've dropped that. Here's what it's going to be instead. Make the most of that. I'll make the most of that too. Like I'm not fickle about these things. I just think as long as there's logical consistency about what a win looks like, apart from just a Nexus exploding, then we'll make the most of it. Like I've made League of Legends my life for 16 years now. What's another 16, right?
That's look. I'm hoping this thing's gonna exist for a long period of time. I mean, I wouldn't be talking about it now if that wasn't the case. So, feel you. I do want to get back a little bit to Celsius because I know I'm almost at an hour already, and I don't know if you have like time
We can have
obligations.
some extra time.
Cool. Paul and I, we say we're gonna go for an hour, and then sometimes we end up going way longer. But I just wanted to make sure that's good with you. The winless teams. Speaking of the other direction, who you
Mhm.
got going home this weekend between Dignitas and Shopify?
I mean, it'd be the funniest if Shopify went home. Just that's always funny.
Are you
I think everyone.
I obviously the odds are against it though. Are you like what odds would you need to be willing to pick Dignitas? Like what like in soccer obviously you can have like a point spread of like plus 2.5 goals or whatever that might be. Like what spread would you need to feel comfortable picking Dig in this matchup?
I don't feel comfortable giving kind of like weighted answers just because I have access to scrims, right? Like
Okay,
people
true,
could
yeah.
definitely like use it for like betting info or whatever. But I look at the Dignitas roster and it's not a rookie roster, right? There's a lot of experienced players that they have a full week of scrims finally, right? With their whole lineup. And then Shopify, they have I think they probably have a similar feeling that we did in 2023 when we thought we had a super roster, but the results weren't coming together. Where it's like, wait, it was like very clearly last year, you would assume the like public narrative and the private narrative of like it's the mid laner is like the the thing that they zeroed in on, and now they've got the mid laner, so they think, and it's certainly not Zinni's fault that they're 0-4. I'm
No.
not saying I'm not saying it's not his fault, but you know what I mean. It's not
I
like
mean,
wow,
I'll
you
say
got
it
the
for
wrong
you. If you're
guy.
looking at it, it's realistically, it's contracts turning like I relate contracts to a Targaryen in many ways. Where if it's turning up heads, it's going to be one of the best you're going to see. But if it's turning up tails, might be an issue at points.
So
And so
there's a
far,
lot of
it's
hypotheses for why they're struggling, but it isn't clear. The blame game is still like the retrospective is still to be written in a year's time, right?
yeah.
And so, given that, I think it's always delicious to prey upon a downfall, having gone through downfalls myself. Like I don't take it personally when it was me or other people. So I think it'll be competitive. Like I don't think it's going to be a crazy 2-0 stomp. I think Shopify will be desperate for one, right? And that's always interesting. Is like when you're Dignitas, I think that like team talk for Dignitas is like our guys are finally here. We're finally boots on the ground. We know how good we are. Let's go out there. And for Shopify, it's like we have to win, and those are always going to be banger games. So is that Saturday? Is it Sunday morning? I actually
That
don't know which game it is.
It
Because
is
that's
Sunday.
one I'll be
It
watching.
is right
Oh,
before
so
your
it's
guys'
before our
series.
game.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, I'll be kind of in prep mindset, but it's still going to be super interesting to see what becomes of that.
The one I relate that to, and this is an experience that you went through that I love bringing up as like a historical point of context, is that 100 Thieves versus C9 matchup in the summer of 2020 when you guys subbed
Hmm.
in for the first time.
Contracts.
Boom,
Boom.
yeah, and you upset. You were the first loss for that C9 team that had
Yeah.
all the weight in the world on their shoulders, and for you guys, you're subbing in somebody. There's like no pressure to win this game. You're not expected to, and sometimes that's when you just click. Even if it's for a single game or a single series, sometimes it just happens.
And the game is so streamlined these days, like if Shopify makes a hasty early gameplay and Dignitas gets a big lead on jungle or bot lane or something, like all you can really do is fight yourself out of mistakes. And I think that's difficult to do, and the Dignitas players are strong. And obviously there's the Palafox revenge story
Oh, it'd be
that's
so
super
sick.
interesting there. Because I think my formulation on Shopify from the outside is I do take some I do have some belief that Palafox was kind of there. Here's what we should do. Here's how we should deploy. Like I think he was probably the leader voice that obviously over the year it started probably to water down because when your own form is getting poor, then it's hard for people to
Yeah.
buy into your vision of the game. It's not going to be Zinni's vision of the game. So it's going to be somebody who's experienced but never been kind of like a primary shot caller, or maybe a first voice, or a you said the plan and if it went wrong, everyone knows you're the person who said it. However you want to call it, it's not as distinct as IGL and Counter Strike. And it seems like there's still bugs to work out and there's a language barrier through it all. So I do think their vision of how to enact the game plan, either from scrims or from the coaches or even from the person who's leading, is not fully formed. And that's why I think you get all of the comments around people who've played them of like, yeah, I mean, the players are good, but like it's not, the vision's not coming together is kind of like the vibe you get from everyone. I've been in teams like that. I know what that looks like, and it can click, but it can also take time. So that's why it's a fascinating test for Shopify on Sunday morning.
Is there a world where any of these teams do like I doubt it, but is there a world where they change a roster or bring in like a six man or something after lock in if something does go poorly wrong, or is like the unanimous consensus for the most part of like pretty much nothing gets touched until after like spring, like from the team? Like it's just too short of a period of time with the visa issues and with everything else that like it would never happen. Because like in Call of Duty, I'm used to like, hey, you have a bad 4 or 5 weeks. There's enough scrim data and enough stage games that you're getting dropped. But in League, obviously, that's much farther from how it works.
Yeah, it's team to team. Obviously, you can kind of separate the league into four teams that boot camped in Korea and theoretically are in win now mode, and four teams that didn't. It's not as clear cut as that, right? But it's one way to think about it. It's like four teams justified the expense of going to Korea in December, and Shopify was one of them. Going 0-3 is the clearest indicator of something significant is wrong. And if it was C9 or TL or Lion going 0-3, I do think the roster change bells will be ringing. There are talented players who are sitting out who are ready made. It doesn't even have to be rookies, right? I think for Shopify, from the outside, and I've only had very limited interactions with, their business staff. They're very patient and kind of buy into longer term projects. And there are lots of good reasons to not panic. And obviously Tanner is over there, who I worked with very closely. And I think that they would be very process driven about it. And I think that's the sensible way to go. It's just if you are process driven about it and week 3 of split 2 hits, then are you 2 months behind the 8 ball, or you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
with such a results based industry. So my suspicion would be that unless Dignitas like absolutely ran wild on them, I couldn't imagine Shopify making a roster change even if they went 0-3.
No. I think I'm pretty much in the same boat at this point. TL versus Sentinels is the only one we haven't covered. Any chance for Sen?
They were better week on week. So I think there is a chance. But yeah, I definitely don't have the same, like, the impression that people had of TL, like the caster narrative around them. I have to assume that's based on how they were scrimming teams in Korea and maybe how they were scrimming teams very early in North America. Um, because they're good in scrims, but they're not like, wow, we won one game. It was the worst day of their scrim week. You know, like they're a good team, but they're not unassailable. Like the strongest scrim team I ever saw domestically was C9 2020. They were unbelievable. The meme was always like, we had long reviews to 100 Thieves, so we would like, the scrim started at 12. We played 5 games straight at the time. It'd be like 2:40, and we'd be like in the lobby, like waiting to start game 3. And the joke would always be like, "What the hell? C9's on game 5?" You know what I mean? Because they'd already won 4 games in like 8 minutes, and they were like, that was always the meme with every team was like, "How can we only be on game 3? It's C9's on game. C9's on for the day." You know, like that was always they were really really good at that time. Obviously, we had a very high scrim win rate on Flyquest last year, but it wasn't the same kind of like no one could get out of the laning phase. The meta changes, the world changes, etc. From there. TL are good. TL have good players, um, but I don't think they're. I think they still got lots to work out. Like they clearly have not fully integrated Morgan or worked out exactly what type of team they want to be. So TL could lose, but I think you just have to bet on TL.
Gotcha. Last topic that I want us to hit on, unless there's something that is there anything first and foremost that you want to talk about that we haven't mentioned yet? Want to open the floor to you because it's open conversation.
No, I feel like I have plenty of ways to get the message out. You know, lucky enough to do interviews like I did with Richard, Monty, and Thorin on over on LFN. So I know you always bounce burning topics off people, whether it's like, in your shorts or on your podcast and things like that. So always super happy to kind of talk about things, because I never want to position like we have everything worked out on the team side, in the ecosystem, in esports. I get to come in every day and take inspiration from things that are happening around the scene. I'm sure you probably enjoyed the conversation around kind of like what inspirations can we take from KC and Koi,
Oh yeah.
rather than just kind of like sitting there and being like, but we don't have a regionalized fan base or we don't have a solo language. Like there's still so many different inspirations that can be taken. And I'm proud of how we've kind of like debuted our roster this year. And that's not about the wins per se. Obviously, it's nice to win, but we were kind of this like behemoth of competition from North America and in the West for a long time. And I think people were ready to kind of like shit on us, like people were ready to be like, well, that's over, like that in every Reddit thread you saw when it came to like a sheep leak, it was very much like, well, Inspired's gone, pack it up, Bwippo's gone, pack it up, Busio's gone, pack it up.
The
People are
Busio
preying
one's even
upon.
hurt. Like that was
Yeah,
that one just I mean, I know you guys probably like I know you're very
yeah.
happy
Look,
with your roster
I
right now. I don't want to like say anything on that. I'm just saying like obviously I'm sure we all would have loved to keep Busio in NA.
look, you know, I, I've known Alan since he was 16. Like I convinced him to roll swap and come into support. He's a really nice kid, a joy to work with, and he was definitely one we wanted to keep. I think that was very obvious. But at the end of the day, um, he made a decision for himself and his career. No one could say it was the wrong decision. And I'm not someone who gets let down when people make decisions where they take time, take in all the information, and make a measured choice. Obviously, history will kind of write the things, whether it was the right choice or not. But ultimately, like, I only can cheer him on and wish him for success. Like he's young. It's a great opportunity for him over at KC. And there wasn't really much for him to prove in North America. And at the end of the day, if North America had instituted different things or the things you wanted or the things that worked, if North America had been where it was in 2016, he would never have left, right? Like North America was the pinnacle at that time. He outgrew North America. That's like the reality that we have to take from that. And some people will take a very kind of depressed view of that. I see it as a challenge. I see it as, needing to rise the level here and to make sure that in the future, talented players like that won't make the same choice.
How far off
I
are
think
we
that's what we have
on?
to play.
How far off are we like of getting back to a? I mean, I don't think an equal playing field honestly is possible. Like just being completely honest, I don't like we can't replicate domestically here what K Corp and what MCOY have done with the resources that we have available to us. Like I think we have the markets to do it for sure. I just don't think we're in a position where like we have the money and the time to develop that. Like we're playing a catch up game that we're really far behind on. So it's like, how do we basically what do we need to do at this point to stop the outflow? Because as of right now, it feels like year over year, if a North American player proves themselves decently well, I find it hard to believe that we're going to be able to pay more than Europe pays. I find it hard to believe that we are going to be able to offer the experience that Europe offers right now with the multiple road shows. If you're on even a top 6 team at this point, the chances of you playing in front of at least 3 to 4,000 fans more than twice a year is pretty high. Like, how do we stop that bleeding? Like, is there anything that like I know you guys have your methods, but is there anything that we could be doing better as fans as well? Like what in the world do we do?
I never. One thing that I've been consistent on my whole esports chapter, again for a decade and a half now, is I never put the onus on the fans. Obviously, you could say if there were way more of you and watching, it wouldn't be a problem, but that's like such a defeatist or like useless thing to say. I think it's very much on the people creating the product, which in this case is Riot and the teams, to come up with ways to justify people choosing to give their limited free time and attention to the product we put out there, which is competitive League of Legends in North America. I think that the domestic LCS product being something that's compelling, it's a group effort on the side of the teams and Riot. And I think coming back to like the people preying upon our downfall, the things that I really have appreciated, and then we were actually giving credit. We had our town hall meeting earlier today, and things we're giving credit is that I love the reception of the quad video that we released, and kind of how whether you come from I love that like a lot of people resonated with the video from very different walks of life. You'd have like, oh, it's just like with my little brothers. There'd be people like, oh, I'm a teacher and I know how it is to have kids like that in my class. There's people who have wanted to know more about the players, and like, oh, now I know like what the environment is inside. Like from all different vantage points, people were able to like apply their own situation or their own lens to the lens they were being provided. And that's something we're challenging to do with more than just one player. That's like the approach we're trying to take with our content this year. We're calling it project personalization internally. And at the same time, if the 7 other teams have a thesis on why their team is going to be moved to the front, why their team is going to be grow year on year, whether it's pure competitive success, maybe like someone like Lion is doing, or if it's some combination of influences or other factors coming together to make their story more compelling. I just want Riot and the other teams to also be taking bets, because I think that's the way that we learn, right? Like everyone will see what works, take an inspiration from it, copy it, refine it, whatever it is, and we'll move forward. And if we're convincing handfuls into tens into hundreds of people to tune into the product from then, we'll become the region that people won't want to leave, you know? I think that's really all we can do. Like at Flyquest, we treat our players well. We try to put together rosters that are compelling and try to win from it. And we try to treat our fans and think about what our fans want to see. And yeah, if I can be confident that every team is doing that, and I feel like year on year I get more confident. There was definitely times where it was easy to point at a couple of teams and be like, "What are your goals for being here?" I don't feel like that about any team in 2026. Even the names that people would point at in previous years are trying something and showing their work, and that's enough for me. That maybe I'm too optimistic, but I think that's the small ripples we can make right now, and they'll turn into waves if we keep honest about where the wins and losses are.
And I want to give you guys credit for the short form content push, because like obviously I know I was a little bit harsh in the off season, which I think is still valid to this point. I don't think we did enough in the off season at all amongst all the teams. I get you guys have like team turnover and the players are not here. That's in my opinion where reliance on creators.
But you
really
don't owe us any of you don't owe us those excuses. I know you've been around long enough. Like I still remember the first time we met. Do you remember the first time we met?
I'm trying to go back. Well, in online space or in person?
No, in person. If you remember, I brought Busio to you at MSG in 2022 Worlds.
I was trying to remember because I was at finals in 2019 summer, and I wasn't sure if you were there.
I wasn't here yet.
Okay, that I knew you started in 2020, but like I'm assuming conversation that happened prior.
Yeah, but for the chat context, I brought Busio to you, and I actually accepted your interview because you're the only person who requested a Busio interview because he was a sub at that time. He hadn't played yet. He was an academy player, and you requested him for TikTok stuff. I think I was told by the Riot handler, and I was like, that's at that time I was like had almost no insight really into TikTok, so I probably thought it was going to be dances or some content like that. I wonder if that I don't even know if that content was ever posted.
It was just a short 3 to 4 minute interview of just
reheat it after we post this. Just
I do not need to see myself back then. I had no facial hair.
Bro, come on,
my hair was long. No, it was bad. I'm telling you, I looked like a dude that was well.
Remember, there is thousands of hours of me casting from 14 years ago with a high Australian accent voice and a different accent that I have now.
That is, like, I promise you,
there's plenty of stuff out there, bro.
To us Americans, one, that sounds fantastic. Australian accents, no matter what the variation they are, we love them here. Okay, so what you're saying is a negative is a positive for us. I look like people can go and look at it. If you type in like Shinnok 100T Busio, you'll see the vertical video of us standing in the hallway. Back behind MSG, because I got 3 interviews, I think, that entire Worlds. One was with Busio, one was with Yamato, and the entire time with Yamato, I just talked about, like, because he's the best dressed person in all of esports, like, without question. Just talked about his stuff.
Also, perennially 35 years old, whether he was 18 or his current age, he always had that deep voice.
He's never going to age. It's, remember the Dos Equis beer commercials, The World's Most Interesting Man?
Yes.
He gives me that vibe. Always has, always will.
I mean, Leslie Nielsen, is also like a bit of an older reference, but he was like 60 years old for about 40 years. So I know how it goes. But that was the first time we met. Then in Jersey in 2023 finals. So yeah, I mean, you've had a long road here. Like I think you've been around the block enough times that you kind of like give teams outs or credit or whatever you want to say, and sometimes that's appreciated, and sometimes it's like you don't really owe us that, like you can just be like, I am a consumer of content, I don't get enough and I am upset, because you have to choose what you're solving for, right? Like for me, for example, I don't really consume shorts. That's like not obviously, like I look at our shorts, if you know what I mean, but I don't browse TikTok or YouTube shorts or Instagram reels. I want the 40-minute deep dive into things. I want the content that we are not producing. And it's like, at the end of the day, is the content for my edification, or is it for kind of like the business goals and development of Flyquest? And there's definitely been times where orgs made decisions based on one senior person's like whims, not so much anymore. And I have to accept that the fans don't have a lot of attention, and we have to fight really, really hard to compete for it. And so shorts is the way to do that.
Well, the thing that I've always made the argument on, and was the beauty of TikTok whenever I started, was like TikTok got me into more long form content. It very much is a gateway. Like the only reason I watched Suits,
that has to be a minimal kind of like,
tell that to Netflix, bro, whose Suits numbers, like the series Suits,
that's
fair. Off
that is one
massively
example.
Because like there's so many Heated Rivalry, for example, as well. Like that was naturally going to go viral, obviously, but the edits on TikTok like sent it into the stratosphere.
I want to tell you you're wrong, but I've never seen the TikTok, so I can't speak to it.
So my thing is, I keep my TikTok feed entirely clean of gaming and esports. I see no esports or gaming content at all. Mm-hmm. That way I can, whenever I'm trying to relate things to like what's current, I have a very good pulse on what's current. I'm
Mhm.
naturally going to watch the longer form stuff on gaming. I don't need to see the shorts as much because like I know instinctively kind of what they are. But like what I want to see from more teams is like you said, have that longer form content, but know how to chop up that longer form content into short form and promote the shit out of it. Because all it takes is one of those clips going viral, and then magically your series, your video, whatever it might be, the personality in there, like you've got a star like that. And you might post 200 videos before you ever get that one that goes viral. But all it takes is one, and then you're set.
Yeah, and I think that's the adage we're trying to apply these days. I think we've already done more for individualizing Quad and Masu than we were able to in 2 years of being very much at the forefront. You know, that they were obviously dominated from a PR sense by kind of these big stars around them.
Yeah.
It's not like Busio was like defined until quite late in the piece as well, right? That was more of like a mid 2025 thing than a super early 2024 thing. And yeah, continuing to chip away at that, continuing to invite people in. That used to be, you know, game cribs and kind of like TSM Legends kind of content. Now it's finding little vertical slices that, and then hitting kind of consistent themes to like just show people the innate great things that are there from all these players because they're more than just their mouse clicks. Now, when the mouse clicks are tight as well,
Then
then
it
at least you're
helps.
rowing in the same direction,
Yep.
right?
And when everything hits flow state, that's whenever it really takes off. But
But the one thing I'm not going to do is to be like, we're 2-0 now if we lose to C9, abandon ship, or come in and kind of like shake the shake things up or anything like that. Like, I think we have a really good idea of like what we signed up for. And the one thing I've always, 100 Thieves definitely, when I was less senior in the company, it felt like you were a bit of a, at the whims of kind of like senior leadership and stuff like that, or Reddit or things like that. The one thing I'll be is if we do a good job scouting, if we come in with a good impression with a settled backroom staff, then we know what we're signing up for. And if that means that we're crazy overperforming, great. If we're on the money, great. And if we're underperforming, then we got to learn from that. You know, those are like the three things there. I think right now we're feeling good about our wins, but more from the perspective of that's like 5 useful learning experiences for these guys. They're only going to be the richer for them.
last thing I'll ask you, because I know this will take like 5 minutes, and then that's an hour
Mm.
and a half, and that's enough of your time that I've pulled out. Am I crazy for thinking that we could have an annual event in New York here? Like
No? Why would you be crazy to think that?
cost, the willingness of teams
When
to
you say
like.
an annual event, are you saying like
I'm saying we can
does that
scale it to any capacity that we want. I don't care whether it's a finals. I don't care whether it's like a road trip LEC style where, 4 teams come out and like say it's you guys, TL, C9, take your pick of who you want fourth. I would say Shopify is a good bet, and they hopefully fly Ludwig and Charlie or one of the two out, and bam, you've got enough to sell out easily a Broadway size theater, 3,000, no problem there. Like, surely we can do that annually. And that touch point gives like at least I'm obviously going to be viewing this selfishly. That gives me something as a creator that's trying to grow the community here, something that I can latch onto and build the local community here. Because one of the other things that like I've been thinking about for a bit is like trying to do some sort of local tournament here, like a battle of the boroughs, like
Mhm.
team from each borough, allow Jersey City to come in because bias there to add a 16, but like do something like that, and the reward is you like go to this event or maybe like finals of it. I don't know, play like a best of 3 or something before it. Like I don't know how you tie it in fully, but like those are the things that when I think back to like the Overwatch League and what the New
Mhm.
York Excelsior did very well in the community here was like there was a lot of efforts that went into just providing for the community here and then tying them into the events that they knew would eventually come. So you're just building this community, and just hyping them up to unleash them on whatever is going to be happening. But if you don't have that point that you're unleashing people on, it makes it tough because then they have nothing that they're like looking forward to or trying to build towards.
Yeah, I've never interacted with grassroots localized esports, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Like, I think that if you're asking me the question of like, if you told me like some parameters, like insert size of audience required, insert, and I get to pick the teams. Like I think that's something that I feel qualified to answer. But the idea of like we did a really good job with high school esports and collegiate and other initiatives, and we feel like we have a bed of 300 to 500 really engaged people. If we get like some LCS teams or other international names, can't we grow it to this sort of product that's profitable? That's like something that's like a little bit beyond my scope. But if you're asking me, you know, could Red Bull League of its own or those sort of off-season events be reaching a consistent fan base in specifically New York? I'd have a lot of confidence just because when I was at MSG, again, Worlds 2022, even for the group stage games, I was struck by just how many Chinese fans were there. Like it was, you probably remember this. It was like
Oh yeah,
60% Chinese fans, maybe more.
they were the loudest chants in the building. Like that might be an uncomfortable truth to people. C9 chants got the loudest of any of the NA teams because obviously EG wasn't.
But yeah,
Danny
at
wasn't
least
there.
for
They
that
weren't as
opening
popular.
stage, because I wasn't there for the later stages. 'Cause 100 Thieves was eliminated, but C9, the Chinese fans were a majority of the crowd. It felt like at least, and so if you told me, you got premier Asian teams, whether they are LPL or LCK, to attend event matches with prominent Western teams, like it would do well. Like
I
for
think
sure,
we
that
could
would be a
do it
product that does
domestic
well.
though. I genuinely believe that we could make it work with the top 4 teams from North America.
With
3,000.
you're saying off season, not
No, I'm
like
saying in
LCS
season.
finals.
Not even
No,
finals. I'm saying in season, a weekend of spring split games where you play
yep.
2 of your series, you take the next weekend off so that the other teams can play from the studio. Like we focus everything purely on the 4 teams that are here. There's no world I'll even just promise you this. I guarantee you, just me standing out with a sign in Washington Square Park, which I would do for the entire
Hmm.
3 months
And
leading
film
up to
for
this,
content.
for
Yep. Hmm.
content, like I will sell out 2,000 tickets like that. I promise you, I'll make that happen. So like,
I
there has
I
to be a world where we can
agree.
make that profitable.
If there's clear stakes, like it's part of the actual circuit, I do agree that domestically we could get 2 to 3,000 people. They would not be paying enough per ticket for it to be break even.
We can't lower the production stand like quality at all to make like even if we're
I
part
mean, look,
like
that's not my decision to
okay yeah.
make, right? But like my impression would be that the economics wouldn't get it because Thorin does a great job of talking about this. Like the amount you pay for a concert, the amount you pay for a 2.5 hour ticket versus the amount you pay for a, I don't know, 2 best of 3 day, 1 best of 5 day, whatever it is like really disproportionately different. So yeah, with load in and setup, I couldn't imagine that being a profitable endeavor, but I could imagine it selling out, and that's still a metric of success, right?
Yeah,
That's still
that's marketing budget right there. That's promo shots that you're going to use on broadcast for years to come. Like that's I
I
find it
mean, I'm with you, but
yeah.
that you can have that conversation with the Riot marketing budget guy.
I just got co-streaming right, so I got one
True, actually,
conversation
you gotta
done.
watch yourself, bro.
Well, that's an off-stream conversation I can have at
Got
a
it.
different
I see.
point. But
Already getting in trouble. Nicely done,
not
Dave.
I didn't get in trouble for anything. It was more a conversation before I even got rights about like I mean, I'll just be I'll be honest with you. I won't say what was said or anything there, but like I've publicly asked for John Needham and Chris Greeley to be fired from their jobs. That obviously
I
doesn't sit well with some people within Riot. I understand that. But like I'm also not going to sugarcoat certain things. Like when I'm co-streaming, there will never be a point where I'm discouraging Riot or any of the people on there. Like that is when we are talking about the LCS and we are obviously live streaming their product, there are certain standards that you have to have. But the thing I said when having the conversation, accepting it is like my Monday through Friday videos where I'm just breaking down the business, the analytics. Like if a decision was ever made to go back to the weekdays, I'm calling for every person that is involved with the LCS's head. Like, I'm sorry, that's gonna happen no matter what. You can't make a bad decision and not expect criticism to come with that. So like everybody's on the same page.
I doubt those people take it personally, bro. Like,
I
many
I
people have
was
asked for me
told
to be.
I was told somebody somewhere was weary of me representing the LCS
Which,
potentially because of that, which I do understand. Like from a
yeah.
corporate point of view, I get it. It's an inflammatory statement, but
Look, as someone who's been called to be fired many times across multiple jobs in esports, I think in the moment it always feels shit. No one likes being called out, right? But you just have to hope that the decision makers on your future can weigh information correctly, you know? Like if you're calling for someone to be removed and their direct boss reassesses the information and makes a decision, it's not on you. Even if you led a conversation or pointed people out, it doesn't feel like that in the moment. But you just have to kind of like feel like your decisions were made the right reasons. And we obviously don't know what variables the right esports people are working on.
yeah.
Even as a franchise partner, you don't exactly know all the budget conversations or the negotiations with Tencent or anything like that. You know, like I don't take that stuff personally. I doubt too many people do, but yeah, it'll make them weary. That makes sense.
And hey, I get it, but at least we're here now. Hopefully, growing things, viewership's
And you,
going up.
I want more people calling out more people to be fired because that's usually a sign of passion and interest in the product that we're putting on. You know, like let's have the tough conversations. Let's talk about those things in front of cameras and on microphones. I know I'm pushing myself to have a public perspective on more things this year because what the fans want. They want to feel like that there's things they can't. They understand there's things they can't control, which makes sense. There's been 16 years of this precedence and they want to make sure that their voice is being heard. And I think it was a one-way conversation into the void for a long time. I don't think it's that way anymore. I think Mark, when he steps outside of his like LTA cone of silence situation last year, does a really good job of keeping his finger on the pulse. I think orgs do a better and better job of having public voices that put themselves out there. I watch, obviously English Premier League and soccer, and like Manchester United's been going through a rough time, and it feels weird that like the coach and players are the ones talking about sporting things and like other people are like hiding from accountability. So it's not like every sport has it down, but I feel like accountability is out there and like Dignitas now has a person who's talking about why and where they're doing things. Like those are moves in the right direction. And so I implore fans to keep us honest, like if you can do it constructively, great. If in the heat of the moment you don't do it constructively,
Yep.
I understand, like I never take offense from these things.
If there's one parting thing I could request of you, and this is not just you, this goes for a lot of other people. One of the things that I've been desperately missing since Travis left the space was obviously Hotline League at Finals is like a big hit. I need you and two other owners of teams to go on an episode of Pros and just talk. Because we like so many of us like
They did a coaches episode, so I guess
they
they've
did a
already
coaches,
kind of.
and that's fine. But like I'm like I know Steve got in trouble for it, but like I miss the days where like you had Steve and Reggie going up and like lambasting for their teams and like talking like at least a little bit more in depth if you're on Pros, like talking about like the business. Like it adds a level of relatability to what many see as like these just corporate entities when those at the top come out and speak. Like CEOs of public companies have to have earnings calls for a reason. And I don't feel like we see enough of the higher ups of some of these teams and some of the orgs. You obviously are you're on content everywhere. Like I know I will get my fill of Papasmithy content at some point soon. But like convince the other people in the room to come out with you once or twice.
If it helps you or hurts, I don't know, but my suspicion is it's not that they're getting lots of requests and declining them. I think the people you're talking about, Steve and Jack, and previously Andy, like spread really thin. Like the trend in esports has been to take on more esports again through the EWC partner program and things like that. So they're not just like watching their teams in the stands, and then like declining content like maybe they were in the past. I personally say yes to all media asks. Like I did like a interview with Laura during Worlds. She like requested me to do some like material that we recorded. I think we're playing Flying Oyster or something, and I'll always say yes just because I feel like I owe it to the fans. And if I want to position Flyquest as an open org, I have to take it on myself first and foremost. But if that's the content the fans want and those people are available, like why not come and chat?
Sounds good to me.
I'm down.
I really hope this. I mean, I'm obviously a business snob. I love that type of stuff. I know it's probably more niche than like Double Lift Bjergsen popping out, but like, I think it does a lot for the culture. But
Yeah, and we'll do our best to get the players to make sure the players always have the microphone because they're by far the most important element to be out there. I'll never put myself ahead of them. That was a really intentional thing when I joined 100 Thieves in 2020. We didn't have a lot of stars. We had Medius and Someday and then some more lesser known. And I basically was like, please just like make it all about the players, not about me or my transition. But if we're doing a good job and other orgs do a good job, we get the shorts up on the road and people want to hear the old fogies talk about backroom stuff, then yeah, sure, why not?
sounds good. Anything else you want to throw out there before I end it for us?
No, I appreciate everything you do. Again, congratulations on getting co-streaming. I know that was like a pretty long thing. You did everything short of like boombox in front of the Riot offices, like to get it done. So congratulations on that. You did it your way. Obviously, thanks to all of our partners and all of our fans and all the people. I love reading the messages of the people we've persuaded to stick around as Flyquest fans, even after their favorite player or whatever the vector that brought them into Flyquest like doesn't match as much in 2026 as it did in 2024, like in the aftermath of the Genji series or when we lifted our first title or whatever it was. I appreciate everybody that's like stuck around with us, and we're going to do our best to make new fans in 2026 as well. So, a couple of good weekends, but it's going to be a long season. I'm looking forward to it.
I can't wait to see it. The games have been fun. Everything else around it's been great. Feels like the ball's going in the right direction. What else can you do?
So far, so good.
All right, folks, that's going to be it for us. Thanks for tuning in. The VOD will be up immediately on YouTube for those watching. For those that are looking for the co-stream this weekend, just a quick update. I will be live on Saturday for part of the day. I don't know. My parents are in town. They rarely get to come up, but they're going to be here. So they get priority, but they're going to see a Broadway show on Saturday night. So when they are in their show, I'm going to come back and co-stream for a bit. But Sunday, Bad Bunny takes priority. My parents are from rural Pennsylvania, and the fact that they get to watch Bad Bunny perform for a Super Bowl halftime show.
What time are you back? What time are you home, roughly?
What do you mean?
Like when does the Super Bowl like fully
I think
end,
it kicks off at 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. So we won't be home until like midnight-ish, 1 a.m. East Coast.
Because there is a really good chance there's 3 best of 3s on Sunday. So
I know. I'm gonna try and like catch it on my phone when I can there, but it also depends. Like my family's from Pittsburgh, so knowing my dad, we're gonna be at a table, and then we're gonna meet 5 other people at other different tables that will all consolidate around, and we're gonna have friends that we'll eventually run into later in life. Like it just social butterfly status to the fullest with my family.
Sounds like a New York day.
It sounds like a Pittsburgh day to a certain extent. That's just
Fair enough.
The New Yorkers might not want to talk that much, but all right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll catch you later.